All right, so good morning. Welcome to our Starlight Sprint 8 demo. I'm going to start sharing my screen here for a minute just so you can see what the state of the board is right now. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So I just want to quickly run through what the goal of this sprint was and then talk about some of the team's accomplishments. I'm not going to actually demo a lot today, but we may take a look at some of the tickets. So the goal of Sprint 8 was really to resolve many of the bugs and theming issues that have been reported since the Starlight code was deployed for feedback at both campuses a couple months ago, and also clearing some of the blockers to allow us to continue the associated user testing, and then also to work on some outstanding maintenance work. And the milestone that this sprint is recording is really a brief work cycle that is purposely focused on maintenance, bug fixes, and theming fixes. And this was really planned because the stakeholders at both campuses are still in the process of becoming familiar with the system, testing it out, adding in some real content. And so we aren't quite ready to begin new feature development until our stakeholders have had a chance to actually work with the system a bit. But there was still work that was outstanding that doesn't necessarily require stakeholder feedback and isn't really focused on new features from the stakeholder perspective. So we thought this was a good opportunity for the team to accomplish some of that while we wait for our stakeholders to become familiar with the system. And so we do have a second sprint scheduled starting next week that will be focused on the same thing. So our accomplishments of this sprint, we did a lot of work on bug fixes, some theming issues, and some continued user testing. The team did successfully resolve a number of bugs and issues that had been identified, including an issue reported by UCLA where database authentication was improperly persisting administrator accounts. There was also an issue reported by UCSD where the autocomplete box within the widget edit area wasn't able to expand beyond the edit area, so it really constrained what the user was able to see when they were looking for the appropriate object to add into that widget. There was also a UCSB issue with bookmarked item emails where the formatting was a little bit strange. We weren't getting the emails at all for a while. And this work included some upstream blacklight formatting fixes so it hasn't been incorporated into Starlight yet, but will be incorporated into the future once Spotlight gets on the new version of Blacklight. We also were able to successfully export an exhibit JSON file, which we hadn't been able to do in the past, and this cleared a major blocker on user testing related to importing and exporting exhibits. However, as we cleared that one blocker, we did actually discover some additional bugs. One on the UCSB side, which was related to I believe, the contact form and wanting to reconfirm that email address as part of the import process. So there was some additional work done to resolve that. And then also an issue on the UCSD side with another unexpected error related to exporting exhibits. So that ticket's still open. We're still continuing to work through that process. But hopefully we'll be able to resolve that testing ticket by the end of the next sprint. UCSD was also able to successfully ingest batches of objects via both the URL and local file server methods, which is really exciting, including starting to do some load testing, which is great to make sure that we are able to be bringing in large batches of item into Starlight using these methods. We also did some theming fixes. So there was a transparency overlay that was added to the carousel widget so that the text was readable regardless of the image background color. This was really an issue that was reported both with really light images and really dark images, where if you had black text on dark images or white text on light images, you weren't able to see them. So that transparency border, I believe, was added to both campus themes, so that that text remained accessible and visible by users. We also removed a message that said pending in the UCSB theme that had persisted for admin users once they were in the system and successfully authenticated. On the maintenance side, UCSD has been working to update their Sidekick configuration to bring it into closer alignment with the UCSB configuration, really trying to coalesce around, I think, more of a Surfliner configuration for Sidekick. And as I mentioned, there were a number of upstream pull requests that were made both on the Spotlight repo and also on the Blacklight repo. So the team is continuing to not just make changes locally, but also working wherever we can to fix issues that we're finding in the upstream projects, which is really a fantastic outcome of this collaboration. We also began preparing for the next sprint that will begin on Monday. The focus of that sprint is going to be preparing for the next Starlight planned work cycle, which is to deploy a Surfliner wide Starlight instance. That's going to require a Surfliner theme for the site. So we're beginning to do some work preparing for that theme development. So gathering design assets from Jonathan that we'll need to create that Surfliner theme. We also are hoping to, in the next sprint, replace Riff with Cantaloupe for our IIIF server. And so Alex has begun researching what that might take, and that work will continue into the next sprint. So some exciting stuff, I think, for the team over the next 2 weeks. So did we accomplish everything we set out to accomplish? Almost. We do, like I mentioned, have some outstanding bug tickets that are blocked because of related upstream issues. And there was also just some in-progress tickets that will be continuing on into the next sprint, most notably both the design asset one and the Cantaloupe research work. So that is it in terms of, I know it didn't have a lot of exciting visuals today, but that is pretty much it in terms of a update. I think I forgot to record myself.
Oh no.
Are you sure?
It looks like it says recording to me, Chrissy.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Okay, good. You're right. Now I see the recording. It didn't show up on my little tiny screen. So now this is in the recording, which is awesome. But let's keep it real. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask if anyone has any questions. I'm going to take silence as no. So, Tom, did you want to take it over and give us a shoreline update?
Yeah, I can do that. So I'll start with a little bit of background about what Shoreline is and how what work has already happened at UCSB, because that's the context for this sprint. So Shoreline is a project to support, or a product that will support discovery and processing of geospatial resources. At some point in 2018, UCSB contracted to have a platform set up that would handle that discovery as well as ingest. There were certain requirements set out. Some of those at that time were met, and some of them were not. And the products that were shipped at that point were, there were essentially two of them. One is the Discovery front end, which is a geo blacklight instance, and the other is a backend that mainly exists to support the import scripts and to provide a stable home for the resources that are being imported. And that is a GeoWorks instance, which is a Hyrax-based product that Stanford uses for similar use cases. So those two products have been sitting at UCSB undeployed and unused. And the goal of this sprint was to get them into a shape that they could be evaluated in terms of what we want to do with Shoreline this fall. So the goal was really to unblock evaluation of that existing work. So to that end, we scheduled this sprint with just me working on it. And I've managed to make some pretty good progress towards that deployment. I can actually go ahead and share my screen because there is also a board for this. So the tickets that are explicitly in scope are this 169 deployed, the Geo Blacklight staging server. Stretch ticket is document the architecture, and then at some point between now and evaluation, we need to do number 172, which is load demo data into staging. There's some demo data for the various kinds of data loads that UCSB had in mind back in 2018. So we'll load that data into the staging server. So the goal here has been mainly to take the existing code bases, clean up the technical debt, and get them deployed into Kubernetes and Rancher, with the idea that shortly after that UCSD should also be able to deploy locally and duplicate the same evaluation setup. I'd say we're about 3/4 of the way there, and I'm hoping to actually make a bunch more progress today. I sort of expect that what will happen is that we'll wrap up work mid next week, and that will be the shape of the sprint. And that's a little bit of a time stretch over what we originally planned, but not terribly surprising given how we've allocated resources to it. So yeah, Chrissy, do you have a question?
No, I was actually just going to have a comment that I wanted to put on record, is that Tom also wasn't there when we scheduled his time. And so we did communicate afterwards that this didn't have to be a 2-week sprint. So thank you, Tom, for giving an update after 2 weeks. We really appreciate it. But we know that your time was stretched then over this sprint. So
it always seems to be, doesn't it? So yeah, any other questions or comments from folks before we wrap up? Fantastic.
All right, so thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording then.